On a summer night in July of 1985, a group of men climbed onto a cocaine-laden smuggling boat docked on the Miami River, and every single one of them was a uniformed Miami police officer there to steal the cargo for themselves. What the officers didn't know yet was that this one night on the river had already pulled a thread that federal prosecutors were about to yank until everything unraveled. It is just after 2 a.m. on July 29th, 1985, when the men aboard the Mary C. begin offloading their cargo at the Jones Boat Yard on the Miami River. The fishing vessel is carrying roughly 400 kilograms of cocaine, valued at the time at around $12 million. The crew works quietly in the dark, the way you do when what you're moving is worth that kind of money. Then the police arrive. But what the smugglers didn't know yet, and what the public wouldn't know for months, was that these officers weren't there to make an arrest. 8 men dressed in police uniforms stormed the Mary C. as it unloaded its cargo on the Miami River. The cops weren't interested in the men, just their cocaine. One witness later testified that they had their weapons drawn and were yelling, "Kill them, kill them," as they approached. 6 members of the crew panicked and jumped into the river. 3 of the 7-person crew unloading the cocaine drowned attempting to escape. 3 men were dead in the water, and the officers walked away with the cargo. No police report documented the raid, and the missing cocaine, seized but unaccounted for, triggered scrutiny revealing that the officers had fabricated the encounter to cover their theft. That is the detail that starts to pull the thread. Not the drownings on their own, not even the missing drugs on their own. It's the combination of both, with no paperwork to explain either, that makes the whole story impossible to bury. Because the night of the Mary C. wasn't a moment of impulse. It wasn't a group of officers who saw an opportunity and snapped. Beginning in 1984, a coordinated ring of officers, later dubbed the Enterprise by federal prosecutors, had started stealing cash and drugs from motorists stopped for traffic violations, then selling the product for profit. They then started going after bigger operations by getting tip-offs from informants. The Mary C. was the graduation ceremony. The ring had been running for over a year before they ever set foot on that boat. On July 13th, 1985, just 2 weeks before the Mary C., the officers had already seized hundreds of kilograms of cocaine in secret compartments of the Mitzi Ann, a boat docked at the Tamiami Marina. The Tamiami job marked a turning point for the scale and intricacy of what the ring would carry out. They were escalating. Each job made the next one feel more routine. By the time they boarded the Mary C., they had done this enough times that it felt like work. The ringleaders and their crew had been shaking down dealers, stealing cash and product, then reselling the drugs themselves, using police radios, uniforms, and authority to pull off armed robberies disguised as busts. The badge wasn't a symbol of the law, it was the weapon they used to commit the crime. Rodolfo Arias was one of the officers who boarded the Mary C. that night. Federal records identify him as part of the core group. Weeks before the river incident, the Miami Police Department had named Arias Officer of the Month. The department had handed him an award. Then he helped steal $12 million in cocaine and left 3 men to drown. Armando Estrada, another officer at the center of the conspiracy, had participated in multiple armed robberies of drug dealers across Miami neighborhoods, part of the same network that had been operating for months before the July 1985 boat jump. The charge stack at this point: armed robbery and drug trafficking conspiracy. And that's just what the river gave investigators to work with. What the officers didn't know yet was that one loose end. A night watchman at the Jones Boat Yard who had seen exactly who boarded that boat was already talking, Rodolfo Arias was named Officer of the Month, then helped steal $12 million in cocaine and left 3 men in the river. Would you have believed a cop with that award on his wall was capable of this? Or did the corruption signs feel obvious in hindsight? Drop your answer in the comments below, because the night watchman who saw everything was already talking, and what he handed investigators would blow this ring wide open. Within a month of the bodies being pulled from the river, 10 Miami police officers were under active investigation. That's not 10 suspects in a broad sweep. That's 10 officers connected directly to the same ring, identified inside of 30 days. By the end of 1985, 5 had already been arrested. The federal grand jury was just getting started. What the officers didn't know yet was that the charges coming weren't going to be narrow. Prosecutors weren't building a case around one boat on one night. They were building a RICO case, a racketeering case, which meant the entire enterprise, every job it ever ran, every officer who ever participated, was now a single criminal organization in the eyes of federal law. In June of 1986, a federal grand jury in Miami unsealed a 21-count indictment charging 7 former Miami Police Department officers with racketeering under the RICO Act, conspiracy to commit racketeering, possession with intent to distribute cocaine, civil rights violations, and conspiracy to commit murder. The named defendants included Armando Estrada, Armando Garcia, Rodolfo Arias, Arturo de la Vega, Ricardo Aleman, Roman Rodriguez, and Osvaldo Coelho, with alleged criminal activity spanning from September of 1984 all the way to their arrests in December of 1985. The charge stack now: armed robbery, drug trafficking conspiracy, racketeering, civil rights violations, and murder conspiracy. That's what one boat, one missing shipment, and one watchman's testimony eventually produced. Rodolfo Arias, Officer of the Month, the man with an award on his wall, cut a deal. He turned state's witness and testified against the men he'd worked alongside. Arias served just 3.5 years before entering witness protection. The officers who didn't cooperate faced a very different math. Osvaldo Coelho received a 35-year sentence. Across the board, the convicted officers were given prison sentences that averaged 23 years. 23 years for men who had been handed badges, patrol cars, and the public's trust. 2 of them decided federal prison wasn't part of the plan. The FBI in Washington issued identification orders circulated worldwide, seeking the arrests of Armando Garcia and Victor Zapata. Garcia made the FBI's most wanted list. He spent 7 years as a fugitive before being captured in Cali, Colombia in 1994. When the fugitives were finally sentenced, they received terms ranging from 7 to 25 years. And then there's Ricardo Aleman, convicted, sentenced, eventually released. Aleman was released in 1992, then went back inside after robbing 4 banks in 2003. Some people don't change the habit, they just change the target. The institutional damage was staggering. More than 100 Miami officers were arrested, fired, suspended, or reprimanded as the probe expanded. In the late 1980s, nearly 10% of the entire Miami Police Department had been suspended or fired. 1 in 10 officers gone because of what started with a group of men climbing onto a boat in the dark. Every major law enforcement agency in Miami investigated some aspect of the case, from county police to the FBI, the state attorney's office, and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The federal oversight that followed reshaped how Miami PD hired, screened, and supervised officers for years afterward. These officers believed a badge made them untouchable, that they could rob drug smugglers, pocket cocaine, and walk away because who was going to stop a cop? The answer delivered across years of federal proceedings, was a night watchman, a homicide detective, a grand jury, and a courtroom in the Southern District of Florida. The river was where it started, the courtroom was where it ended, and the Miami River Cops case became a landmark in American law enforcement corruption prosecutions, convicted under federal racketeering, narcotics, civil rights, and tax laws, still cited as the case that proved no badge is wide enough to cover what you did. Subscribe for more cases where the badge didn't protect them, and watch this one next. It's on screen right now.